The ethanol and heavier alcohols like biobutanol are a transition. It turns out that ethanol and biobutanol, if blended correctly, could actually, it's an oxidant, so it can increase the octane. The automobile companies tell me if European gas, well, there's a different rating system, but if you account for the different rating system, the European gasolines are higher octane. Now, what does that mean? It means with today's direct injection engines and lean burn and stratified burn technologies, and with turbochargers, you can get a gasoline engine, which typically is 25%, maybe 30, at best 35% Carnot efficiency cycle. You can get them up to diesel, which is 40, 45%. So going from 30 to 45% is you've just increased the amount of power per unit fuel 50%. That's profound by a little increase in octane, which actually can be done with blending of alcohols and let it rise rather than down blending. So that's a start. But in the end, if we can get the drop-in fuel substitutes with the 10-15% blends of ethanols, again as an oxidant, that would be the end product. Diesel and jet fuels, you need higher energy densities, even still, because there's a premium on that.
We have a few policy issues that are confronting us. We have an E10 blend wall, if you will. We have challenges to the E15 waiver. We have CAFE standards, increasing efficiency standards, which of course is driving down the consumption for the petroleum side of a transportation fuel. Do you think the renewable fuel standard, and of course now we're having some hearings and a Senate activity looking at it, do you think it's in jeopardy?
Well, I hope not. I think the fuel standard, especially the one that is the market draw for non-sugar starch conversions, this is like the cellulosic and beyond, I think those are important. Again, the goal and the technology, which I do think is achievable, is to get it to a point without subsidy. But for the short and midterm, we're going to need help, and these market draw techniques are very important. Let me say something about the fuel standards. I think it has a very bright side that is probably not appreciated, not really talked about, and that is as we go to eventually 54.5 miles per gallon for cars and light-duty vehicles, for the first time, mass-marketed cars built in America, designed for Americans, can be sold abroad. There is a very limited set of people who are willing to spend money on things that get 15 and 20 miles to a gallon in the large parts of the rest of the world. And what people are finding is that you want to build a factory, a manufacturing factory somewhere, and then you want to run it as hard as possible to get the maximum return on your investment for that factory. And so what I'm beginning to see is factories producing automobiles in the United States are now saying, you know what, with minor modifications, we can ship them abroad. This is very important for bringing back the high technology manufacturing back into the United States. It's important for our economic future, for job growth, for all of these things. So sometimes regulations like that actually are stimulant. One that we already know worked is that in the past, the pollutants on diesel engines were viewed as stringent. Initially, industry was very much against this. But now as Europe and the rest of the world is catching up, they are finding out that the American diesel manufacturers have a leg up. They have developed this technology, and it's in a better place, and they have a leg up in the world market. So again, there are some upsides, and nobody usually likes regulations, but in these particular instances,
they've been effective.
They've been effective, and mostly it's going to do a lot to decrease our dependency on oil.
We have a few questions from here. What's the most exciting innovation that you've seen recently?
The most exciting innovation I've seen recently? Oh, that's a tough one. Should I keep it to biofuels, or should it be anything?
Let's keep it to biofuels.
I think some of the what I call systems biology advances and synthetic biology advances could be potentially game-changing, not only for biofuels, but actually for increasing the productivity in agriculture for many, many things. And that's tremendously exciting that as we learn to put in these new metabolic pathways and control these microbes or plants, it's very exciting, the opportunities you can do and improve. In normal plant breeding, perhaps many people forgot that if you started with corn breeding in the 1930s, the output per acre of corn in the United States has increased 8-fold. And now, a lot of these microbes don't breed the way plants breed, and so you'll need some better techniques. But the opportunity for improving what we do is enormous.
What are your thoughts about setting a floor price to facilitate industry participation in providing the stability that we need?
That's a very good question, because the backdrop of that, I'm talking probably to a whole room that knows this, is the fear that if you start to make investments on a pilot and commercial scale, what you're really worried about is the bottom falling out of the market of transportation fuel, of oil going down to, let's say, I don't think it'll ever go down to $40 or $50 a barrel, but it could go down, to, especially during slow economic times, it's conceivable it can go down to $70 a barrel for a couple of years. If you've got this beginning industry, that's pretty tough. I raised this, apparently there are statutes that prohibit, for example, the government, U.S. government, as a procurer of fuels, really has to buy on a sort of an open market, except for small little contracts, which are, don't put a big dent in their budget. So how do you actually guarantee the stability so the bottom doesn't fall out for a couple of years? Now, in the long term, we don't really expect we hope that the economies pick up and things return back to normal, but then back to normal means it's likely the price of oil could go up. But it's those little down slumps, and a couple years of a downturn are enough, and experience has shown before that it's enough to wipe out a new industry. So that's something that we as a country have to think hard about. And I know I'm too long on this question, but Brazil did that. They guaranteed a price. In the 70s, early 80s, they started an ethanol biofuels industry. The price of oil went back down to $20, $30 a barrel. They got wiped out. They started again and guaranteed a floor for Brazilian ethanol. And that gave them enough time to actually improve the production methods. So you get 3-fold more sugar per acre. The production methods greatly improved, and the cost came down. And now I hear that they can be competitive. Well, right now the sugar prices are high, so they're selling as sugar instead of ethanol. But they would be competitive with oil at 40, 50, 60. It depends on who you talk to. Dollars a barrel. So that's pretty good. And so we have the capability. It's not as easy as Brazilian sugarcane, but we have that capability with our resources.
A couple of questions have come in that are interesting. The president's all of the above strategy for energy and power resources. You see natural gas as a power generation or as a transport fuel?
I do. Right now, for heavy trucking, it appears that it already makes sense. If you do the math on that, your typical large heavy-duty truck averages about 100,000 miles a year. Diesel prices or even higher, $4.50 a gallon. Right now, the truck would cost $100,000 just to modify it, which is putting in liquid nitrogen tanks and a feeder system. The same internal combustion engine can be modified. The prices vary. It can be as much as another $100,000, but the real price, after you get some competitors into the market and they're coming in, would be $30,000 to $50,000 more, right? But even at double the price of the truck, capital investment, the payback period appears to be something like 4 years. The great thing about trucks is every 100, 150 miles on a major interstates, you can put liquefied natural gas fueling stations that can be supplied by trucks. So you don't need a filling station everywhere. And trucking, heavy-duty trucking is about 20% of our transportation energy. So you can automatically see maybe half of that being offloaded. Long-haul freight trains, which have 100, 150 cars, you can carry one tanker of liquefied natural gas. Okay, similar sort of thing. More problematic in light-duty vehicles because you need more fueling stops unless it's a centrally located fleet, but there are other issues because now you're thinking compressed natural gas, not liquefied natural gas, because there's a huge difference between going 20 or 30,000 miles, which is a delivery van range, and going 100,000 miles. And then the payback period looks like it stretches, well,
much
forever.
Longer.
So we are looking at ways to store the natural gas in a more compact form, things like that to nudge it. But we do see trains and long-haul trucks as a ready market.
One last question here. Our biggest trading partner, Canada, a clean energy dialogue has been open between the U.S. and Canada. And can you comment on this collaboration?
Well, I think it's very important for many respects. I mean, we share a lot of things. We share, quote, a lot of industries in the sense that if you look at the automobile manufacturing, it kind of spills over into both countries. It is very, we also, both Canada and the U.S. grew up with abundant energy resources. As we go into the future where, there is real risk, significant risks to climate change, we have to figure out how to have the energy accessible and affordable, but also much cleaner. And so it is very important that we work together.
Great. As Assistant Secretary Danielson said, biofuels and biomass are truly transformational. We've kind of reached our time limit for the discussion this morning. And again, I want to express appreciation for your time in coming here. And finally, I do want to make one comment. As you're a member of the field, I want to congratulate the scientific field of physics for the remarkable achievement and the exciting announcement last week about the Higgs boson. That's astonishing. I've read a bunch of articles about it. I'm fascinated.
Well, this is certainly a very important discovery. It actually goes way back when I was a graduate student and a postdoc, and my work then was testing this new electroweak theory where the so-called Higgs mechanism was used in order to give the substance of theory that these forces needed a mass, and this was something that was concocted. Before that, it says we've got it all figured out except for the fact that these particles, we know they have a huge mass, but they seem to be massless. So they're looking for a mathematical mechanism to do this. And so when that Higgs mechanism came along, this is really in the 60s. And I was in the early 70s when I was working on this. So it's certainly going back to my very roots, certainly knew about this. Now, here's one of the things. Very exciting, but we also want to see a little surprise. For literally half a century, we knew that there should be a particle like this, but what scientists really delight in is, yeah, we see the particle, but it's got new wrinkles on it, and we don't understand everything, because then our ears perk up. Now, having said that, it's a great achievement, and I was talking to a group, it was actually a budget committee yesterday, and one of the people mentioned this, and I said, the same thing. We need a surprise, because otherwise it appears we have it all figured out, except for the other 95% of the universe. We don't have a clue.
Well, I can see your passion about has continued in this field. So,
okay. All right.
Mr. Secretary.
Thank you.
Thank you very, very much. Appreciate your time.